Thanks for joining us for this GTC session around HPE's GreenLake delivering high performance computing outcomes as a service in partnership with NVIDIA. As you know, we've entered the exascale era of computing, where we've got three competing workloads that are running on our high performance computing platforms, oftentimes in combination. So you've got big data analytics on the left, artificial intelligence, typically powered by GPUs in the middle, and then high performance modeling and simulation workloads on the right. And these are all running in one mission critical workflow. And they require an immense amount of expertise and stability and high performance and able to be able to deliver the outcomes that actually make differences not only in our businesses, but in our lives and communities as well. And so HPE has worked with NVIDIA and other partners in the market to develop a high performance computing platform that we can deliver as a service to customers that can fit a variety of different workload profiles and that can be consumed in an easy, sustainable manner going forwards. And that brings us to answering your biggest questions. Typically, when we're building an HPC environment and we're utilizing GPUs and we're working with artificial intelligence and machine learning, we're answering some of the biggest questions in science and business, right? And this is what we talk about with that exascale computing and continuing to expand and grow as we have new capabilities empowered by technology. But when we're doing that, we need to transform our IT estate as well, because running these high performance mission critical workloads is not easy and it requires a significant amount of skill and a very resilient environment. And additionally, there's a lot of cost that's associated with high performance computing typically. And so we need to build an environment, build a data center infrastructure platform that takes into account conserving capital and creating a model that gives you liquidity within your environment so that as new technologies roll out, you have the ability to flex into those technologies and continue to expand the advances that you're making in your high performance computing environment. And that ties in with being socially responsible as well. We need to be cognizant of power, cooling, data usage. All of these things ultimately have an environmental cost and they ultimately have a business cost. And it's important that HPE partners with our customers to make sure that we're designing a platform that takes into account those environmental and business costs in a way that's conscientious and makes sense for everyone. And that brings us to what are a lot of the challenges that we're facing when we're building out exascale computing environments? And a lot of it comes to complexity and specialized resources. When you're working with a lot of compute, when you're working with a lot of GPUs in particular, there's a lot of very specific data science knowledge and institutional knowledge around running those platforms and then actually generating insights from the data that you're able to process with those platforms. And that expertise is not easy to come by and it's a very limited resource in the market. And so with HPE, we want to help address that by providing you with resources from our teams and from our partners' teams that can help optimize your environment in the beginning so that it's much easier for you to get the results that you actually need from your high performance computing environment. And then by offering this as a service, we're able to help address some of those capital and return on investments constraints we talked about previously that often occur in a high performance computing environment where there's a lot of churn, we're constantly moving to new technology platforms, and we're typically using parts that are pushed towards the higher edge of their performance tier. And that can lead to a lot of sunk cost. And so that's where a flexible as a service model can really benefit a high performance computing environment where we do see a lot of churn and a lot of new gear constantly being added into the environment. And that helps address the inflexibility of some traditional IT environments where if you have a fixed standard, sometimes it can be difficult to shift platforms, particularly when that standard relies around, specific data science or GPU analytics programs that have interdependencies or reliances on specific version types. And so by giving you an as a service platform that has an integrated hardware software layer that's all tied together nicely with our workload expertise, it becomes much easier to consume these high performance computing resources and actually get results out of them. And this brings us to why HPE GreenLake for HPC. And right now, 83% of HPC implementations are outside of the public cloud. And typically, the reason for that is because HPC tends to be a very expensive workload to run in the public cloud. And there's often interdependencies or latency penalties or data gravity issues that make it a difficult workload to fit into the public cloud. And that's where our as a service on premises platform with GreenLake really provides a lot of value because you've got these challenges: egress charges, data gravity, app entanglement, latency, IP protection. And at the same time, you've got all these requirements from your business units on the right and from your data scientists, where you need high performance, you need expert-led implementation and migration services, you need a resilient environment, and you need to be able to leverage the cloud opportunistically where it makes sense. And we can do that with our GreenLake Central platform. And that brings us to what is GreenLake and how do we offer high performance computing as a service? And so our consumption-based high-performance computing is available in your data center, in a co-location, or on the edge as well at a remote site. And this year, we're seeing a tremendous move in the industry towards as a service, with 75% of enterprises saying that they recognize the benefit of moving towards that model. And with a 3x increase in demand for on-premises infrastructure actually delivered as a service. And so we've seen customers using workloads as a service across an entire gamut from infrastructure as a service, where we're providing them with a platform of, let's say, high performance computing CPUs with NVIDIA V100 GPUs. And then we're delivering that infrastructure as a service and allowing the customer to load their own apps and data on that. Or we can really offer a much more managed service, high performance compute experience, where we're working in partnership with NVIDIA and Intel to offer you a platform that you then simply take back to your data scientists, and it's all integrated fully from top to bottom stack, and they simply load their data into it and they're off to the races from that point. So we've got a lot of flexibility in how we can offer this as a service to our customers, whether it's infrastructure as a service or a more fully managed service where you're just bringing your data to the table. GreenLake allows you to have the self-service experience and pay per use of resources. And this is a really key factor in a high performance computing environment where you're constantly maybe seeing utilization spikes, and you've got a variety of different resources from CPU, GPU, or memory that you might be measuring in different ways. And with GreenLake, we can go in and very granularly measure the amount of resources that you're actually using in your environment, and then only charge you for the resources you've actually consumed. And so we could measure you based on CPU core usage and say, okay, we're going to set a reserve of CPU resources in your environment. We're going to measure against that, and then we're only going to charge you for the CPU resources that you've actually used, installed in your environment. And you'll have a buffer capacity that'll be available to you to burst into on demand. And then that buffer capacity will scale with your environment as it grows over time. So as we add additional resources to your high performance computing environment, that buffer is going to continue to scale with you as well. And what that really allows you to do is have that public cloud experience where you can scale up or you can scale down within that buffer. And that brings us to the last point, is that we can manage this for you. And that kind of comes to my earlier point about we can go anywhere from infrastructure as a service all the way up to a fully managed service. So we can do the firmware implementation, we can do the patching, we can take care of all the driver work and really present you with a comprehensive experience. How we build our HPC platform. And this really talks about the partnerships that we've built in the industry over a period of time that have allowed us to kind of package these workloads up and deliver them as a service. And so by working with NVIDIA in particular, we've leveraged a lot of their experience from artificial intelligence, machine learning, the work that they've done with Kata and Rockham, to create an HPC platform that utilizes their technologies, whether it's V100s, A100s, or T4s in a variety of different workloads, to deploy GPU, AI, and machine learning resources in an as a service manner that's very agile, it's very cost effective, and it comes wrapped with the expertise and the signature of HPE and NVIDIA saying that, hey, we've signed off on this platform. We know that it's going to work for you. We know that it's going to be performant, and that we've worked together from a technology standpoint to create an integrated experience that's going to be easy to use, self-service, pay-per-use, scalable up or down. And that's really what we're getting at with delivering high performance computing resources as a service to you, is we want to make life easy. And that brings us to enabling your HPC environment. We've talked about how having the right expertise to help your data scientists get the most out of their environment is key. And that's really where HPE services can come help. So we can create workshops, we can do proof of value, we can actually even implement artificial intelligence or machine learning systems within your environment. And that can be in your ecosystem, or it can be in a partner ecosystem that we've worked with you to build as well. And we have data transformation services as well. So whether it's migration, whether it's capability assessment, whether it's platform and solution design, where we're looking at overall how are we architecting our platform to get the most performance possible, we can do that. And we can also help you take a look and say, okay, where does it make the most sense for this data to sit from a data gravity standpoint and from a cost standpoint as well. So we provide a variety of different analysis and then workload-based solutions for our customers so that we can take a lot of the headache and the difficult transition or migration work that comes into creating an environment like this away from the customer and instead just enable them with a platform that they're able to use as a service. And that kind of brings us to where are we now with this platform and where are we going with HPC as a service in the future? And so right now, we've partnered with a variety of different hardware manufacturers, particularly NVIDIA on the GPU side. And then we've got several different HPC software manufacturers that we work with as well in partnership. And so we're able to work together to deliver a comprehensive experience right now with HPE GreenLake. Where we're going in 2021 is an even more cohesive integration of our combination of our services, our CPUs, NVIDIA GPUs, and our self-service dashboard, where we're really creating that comprehensive as a service experience that comes with the expertise that you need. It's fully managed for you, and you've got the ability to trial out different workloads and different technologies. It comes in standard sized infrastructure blocks, and it's very easy from a self-service standpoint to add additional capacity, change technologies, or change the platform that you're actually looking at for running your HPC workloads going forwards. So cloud services is coming to HPC at HPE, and it's a very exciting time to be looking at GreenLake and HPC workloads as a service. And this brings us to what does our portfolio look like from an operational standpoint? How are we achieving such high levels of performance, and how are we integrating with our partners like NVIDIA? And this comes in a combination of different things. So working with NVIDIA and Mellanox, we've created high-speed interconnects to minimize latency within our high-performance computing environment. And we've worked with Intel and other CPU manufacturers to create heterogeneous high-density compute platforms that allow us to use several different CPU architectures or memory architectures together in combination to create a more performant platform. And that particularly is relevant when we talk about utilizing GPUs for AI and machine learning. When we're looking at cards like the A100 or the V100, these are cards that require significant CPU and memory horsepower as well to support their graphics resources. And so it's key that we make sure, sorry, I had a bunch of pings in the background there. I'm going to restart on this slide. That threw me off. So how do we actually build our HPC So how do we actually build our HPC infrastructure to get to such a high level of performance? And a lot of that comes down to our partnerships with NVIDIA and with Intel and other CPU manufacturers. And so we've worked with NVIDIA and Mellanox to create high-speed interconnects within our high-performance computing platform that help to minimize latency between CPU and GPU resources and give you an overall more responsive platform that's easier to manage from a density standpoint. And then we've worked with Intel and other CPU manufacturers to create denser compute platforms that are better optimized from a power, cooling, and rack space perspective that allow you to maintain higher boost clocks for longer so that you're getting the most performance possible out of those CPU resources. And that's particularly relevant when we're talking about environments that are really utilizing AI and machine learning and some of the capabilities of our GPU partner, NVIDIA. When you've got cards like the A100 or the V100 running in your environment, you need to make sure that they're paired with the right CPU and memory resources to ensure you're getting the most out of those investments from a GPU standpoint. And so it's very important that you work with someone like HPE who has the workload expertise to be able to say, okay, we've worked with NVIDIA, we've worked with Intel, we've worked with our other partners to design a comprehensive system that works well together and plays nicely, and from a driver stack standpoint is all fully integrated so that software, hardware, and then the as a service elements all play nicely together. And that's really key with our partnerships there, that we've worked together with NVIDIA, we've worked together with Intel and other folks to make sure that this is a comprehensive, easy to use platform that's been vetted and validated for you. So you're not testing anything out. And that brings us to, so what did this platform look like? What are the elements that I might see in my HPC platform? And so you've obviously got the software that's going to be running your actual workload. And that can be your container orchestration platform, it can be your workload manager, and then it can be your actual data analytics platform as well. And then on top of that, you've got the actual underlying infrastructure, the servers and storage that are going to run your HPC workloads. And typically with the servers, we're looking at CPU and GPU optimized options. And so from the NVIDIA standpoint, we're seeing customers use a lot of A100s, V100s, and T4s in their environment from that standpoint and integrating those within HPE's server platform. And from a CPU standpoint, we're continuing to see increases in both core count and frequency from both manufacturers. That's led to significant performance improvements as well. And then combined with our new storage options that allow us to maintain the data side of the house just as quickly as we're maintaining the compute and actual ingest side of the house, we've really created a very attractive option from a full stack standpoint where we've got a full understanding of how the software plays with the servers, how the storage layer ties in underneath that, and then from an interconnect standpoint, how are we tying this all together and making sure that it works in a nice comprehensive package that's easy to use and easy to scale. And a big piece of that is our GreenLake Central platform. And I've talked a little bit about GreenLake Central in terms of, enabling that pay-per-use experience and enabling that as a service experience. And really think of it of the single pane of glass for your private cloud experience. So if you have an HPC environment that you're running as a service, you'll get access to this HPE GreenLake Central tool. And what it'll allow you to do is a couple of different things. In the consumption analytics portal piece of GreenLake Central, it allows you to take a very granular look at the amount of resources you have deployed in your environment and then how those resources are actually being used. And that's where we've talked about measuring whether it's from GPU resources, CPU resources, or memory resources. We'll create a framework for you that will then measure against so that you have an idea of how your environment's being utilized over time, how it's going to grow over time, and then what your cost structure is going to look like as you grow over time. And we know that controlling costs and optimizing costs in an HPC environment is very important. When you're working with very high end hardware that's top of the line, there is a cost associated with that. And it's important that we're good stewards of our HPC platform. And with GreenLake Central, with the cost control portal, it really allows you to create that show back, charge back model internally for your business that can be so key for a high performance workload. And so with a showback chargeback model, you can go into your assets and you can assign them to different business units from our asset tagging platform. And then from there, you can create budgets for those business units and say, okay, your as a service budget for your GPU is X thousands of dollars per month. Your CPU budget is Y, and your interconnect budget is Z. And then you can create a budget and track that over time, over months, have alerts built in, and so it creates a really easy way to track who's using what resources in your environment and where some efficiencies could be gained. And so I've had a lot of customers come to me and say, wow, when I loaded up the consumption analytics portal for the first time, it was eye-opening how over provisioned I was. I didn't realize that I had all of these resources that were sitting around that weren't being utilized. And in a lot of cases, their data scientist teams or their IT teams weren't aware of some of these resources as well. Because when you have an environment that has a lot of churn and a lot of new technology coming in and a lot of growth, it can be easy for things to get swept under the rug or difficult to identify where your resources are. And by having a single pane of glass platform view with GreenLake Central, we really help alleviate some of the complexity of managing a complex HPC environment. And so it makes it a lot easier for your data scientists to actually spin up new instances, create new containers, manage their jobs and clusters, and then get insights from that data and derive value from it much more quickly than a traditional environment where you might not have an idea of how much capacity you have. You might not have an idea of the resources that are available to your data scientists. And it's just generally more difficult to manage. And that brings us to what are some of the operational benefits of moving towards this as a service model? And so we've kind of talked about how we're standardized workload. I'm going to start over on the slide. So how does HPE GreenLake work from an operational standpoint in order to deliver these HPC outcomes to you as a customer? And so we've talked about how we have small, medium, and large t-shirt sizes for the different common workloads that we see our customers address. And that makes it very easy for us to prioritize from a supply chain standpoint, those customers to make sure that they're getting their gear much more quickly. And then additionally, instead of just delivering you gear and sending it on the floor and saying, okay, hey, data scientist team, you're off to the races now. We actually have the expertise, and because this is pre-sized for your environment, it's being delivered as a service that will integrate it into your environment when we install it and set it up so that you've actually got a platform that's ready to use from day one, and you don't have the sunk cost of having this gear installed on the floor but not actually deriving any insight from it, because there's still a significant setup period before you can actually derive value from that. So with GreenLake, we're really trying to increase the time to value that you get out of your HPC environment. And we do that by allowing you to move much more agilely, to add capacity to your environment much more quickly, and to really have the just-in-time IT experience that an as-a-service model enables you to do. So that brings us to some examples of customers that have used our HPC platform as a service to derive real business value and outcomes. So Eni SPA is a petroleum exploration company that utilized our HPC as a service platform in order to derive faster and better insights from the data that their data scientists were processing. And this allowed them to create better system modeling and better reservoir simulation algorithms that they had previously done. And so by running on our HPC4 platform and then wrapping that within GreenLake, we were able to create a comprehensive offering that allowed them to move much more agilely and have access to exascale supercomputing resources at a cost structure that made a lot more sense and aligned to the way their business was growing. So they're able to take the cost of this exploration work that they were doing and the value they were deriving from it and tie it directly back to a line item on their books. And so by having this delivered as a service to them, we made it significantly easier for them to access the resources and expertise they needed. And then we put it in a financial model that made sense from a financial standpoint and that was easy to sell within the business. And that brings us to another example. Siemens used global high performance computing to actually advance the way that we all live and work. And so Siemens partnered with NVIDIA to utilize their A100 and V100 GPU architecture to significantly accelerate several of their AI and machine learning workloads across 20 different sites worldwide. And by partnering with HPE and NVIDIA in this case, Siemens was able to move much more quickly and deploy globally at scale in a cost model that made sense to them and have access to the technology, the experts that they needed, and knowing that they had a vetted, verified platform that was going to be easy to use, that they could scale up or down, and that was going to be resilient and performant over time. And so that brings us to some of the management services options that our customers have utilized within this HPC as a service option. And so I've talked a little bit about how we've got infrastructure as a service kind of on the left. And then on the right, as you can see, we move along to monitor, operate, administer, advise, and optimize. So we can really go all the way up the stack in your environment and really get to the point where we're providing you with application best practices. We're helping you to optimize your infrastructure from a solution design standpoint. And we're making sure that from a compliance standpoint, you are compliant, you're managed well, and that you have a system in place that makes sure that going forwards, you'll remain compliant for whatever regulation you might need to advise against. And so it really allows us to deliver this managed service experience. It's remote delivery, it's turnkey, it's a secure VPN tunnel that we create, and it's a very, very attractive option for customers that just want a platform that they can turn on, access, and utilize on day one and really derive the full value from without necessarily having that ramp up period where internally you're creating that knowledge and run books to be able to actually utilize the environment fully. And that brings us to a little bit on what we touched on the beginning, which is having an HPC platform is great, particularly because so many of our customers are using their HPC and their AI and ML capabilities to push technology and science forwards. They're using GPU technology to crunch bigger data sets, to create self-driving technology that keeps people safe, to create real tangible outcomes. But at the same time, we've talked about how there's often a high cost from a computing resource standpoint or from a power and cooling standpoint. And so it's important that as we're making these advancements from a science standpoint, that we're also taking into account the environmental and economic aspects of these HPC platforms. And so when we designed GreenLake and we designed this HPC as a service platform, we really wanted to help to eliminate over provisioning And that provides both efficiency from an environmental standpoint, in that we're not using or deploying resources that aren't being utilized. And it also provides efficiency from an economic standpoint, where we're not paying for technology debt. We're not paying for warranty and support burn of gear that's sitting on the floor, not being utilized, but it still has a cost associated with it on your books. And then we've designed this to be a circular model, right? So because we're delivering this to you as a service and because we own these assets, we're able to, over time, take those assets back, upgrade those assets, you buy them back. We can derive value from these assets in a lot of different ways. And so it really allows you to look at this in a circular manner, as opposed to just having a static environment that doesn't change over time, or that's set on a single standard that can't take advantage of new technology over time. By moving to as a service, we really make it much easier for you to take advantage of the best practices that are coming out, the new technology that's coming out, the new developments that are coming out in this constantly evolving sort of exascale computing era that we've entered. And so ultimately, we need to create a sustainable model from an economic and from an environmental standpoint that allows our customers to continue to fuel that scientific innovation that's driving our world forwards. And then this brings us to why HPE for your high performance computing as a service platform. And the truth is, because we've been doing this for a long time and we're very, very good at it, we're very comfortable with it. So we've got over $4.2 billion under contract within the GreenLake model right now, with over 1,000 customers deployed in over 50 countries globally. We have unique IP that creates our as a service experience through acquisitions and organic investment in HPE's own technology. And then we're partnered with a variety of different partners, whether that's from a channel partner, hardware partners like NVIDIA, or software partners as well. And so we've been doing this for over 10 years. We've got 95% customer retention with our as a service model. And it's a true pay per use on premises cloud like experience. And it's multi cloud, multi stack, and it's easy to use, particularly with the GreenLake Central platform. And so we can address a variety of different workloads as well. And that's something to keep in mind. We've talked today about HPC and we focused a lot on that, but GreenLake is really a wrapper that can go around a variety of different workloads. So thank you for attending this GTC session and learning a little bit more about our HPC as a service platform. We'd love to educate you more. We've got some resources online and some additional videos, and we'd be happy to work with you to create a roadmap that's right if this sounds like a good fit. Thanks for joining HPE at GTC. Don't forget to register for a chance to win your $20 Starbucks digital gift card at the link below. We appreciate your time.